Okay, I'm gonna let everyone trickle in. So we'll give it like another minute or so, and then we will get started. It's a wonderful Tuesday. What did you get up to this weekend, Steph, besides we were talking before you being you being sick?
Yes, it was my dad's birthday, so we had a family birthday party. So that's what we did this weekend.
Nice. Wait, that does sound so nice.
Yep. So yeah,
How old is
but
he turning? Or turned?
he turned 68. So
Big
yeah,
one.
yeah. So it was a good one. How about you?
That's
How was your
awesome.
weekend?
My weekends are always the same. It's a Groundhog Day. You understand. I have a
Yep.
5-year-old daughter, so we are nothing without our routine.
Yes.
Um, so pretty much the same thing I do every weekend. Okay, so it seems like we kind of have everybody here. But in general, hello. My name is Ziera. I am the Director of Product Implementation at GReminders. For those who don't know or are joining us and only know a little bit, we are an end-to-end meeting management platform built for financial advisors. So we automate the entire meeting life cycle from beginning to end, from automated scheduling to client correspondence to proactive client automation, right, within the CRM or proactively reaching out to your clients. And then we also have that in-meeting option, which is our AI note taker, and something we're going to be talking about today, the AI agent, right? So ask anything, do anything. It's kind of like a chat GPT for your CRM. Today with me, though, I have Stephanie Dannebaum. She is with, obviously, as the name says, Stephanie Dannebaum Consulting. She's an incredible mind when it comes to all things CRM optimization, business consulting, and just really cleaning up CRMs. Today, we're going to be talking about leveraging advisor tech tools with AI and automations, two things GReminders loves, and certainly something I know Steph takes advantage of. So, Steph, this is yours. I'm going to give it to you. And I'll just chime in, where needed.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. Always a pleasure to join GReminders. As he was mentioning, I will jump in and introduce myself. So I've been in the industry for about 10 years or so, started out in operations and got my feet wet in the industry, and then worked my way up to be a junior advisor. And then in 2020, 2021, made the pivot to be a consultant. So really where I value the relationship that I have with my clients is really being able to take processes and translate them into the CRM. So that way you can be able to get those business insights and be able to leverage the CRM to its fullest. But I see that the CRM, not only should be your hub, but it's only as powerful as the other tech tools that you use. So that's why I love to partner up with GReminders, Precise FP, and others, because I feel like the whole tech should be working together to be able to leverage the team that you have, or if you're a solo, being able to leverage the tech so that way you have more time to focus on clients or prospecting, or your family. So I've been in the industry for a long time, have worked with all sorts of tech through the years, have advanced degrees, got my CHFC as well. And then, as I mentioned, I've been a resource partner now for quite some time with GReminders. And then recently, Precise FP has launched theirs as well. So really just making sure that we're leveraging the software and being a resource to you, so that way you can leverage these softwares along with your CRMs. So the two CRMs that I usually work with are Redtail and Wealthbox. So can just either one, and I help out with migrations as well as current users. So I do a health check if you're a current user of your CRM, and then we figure out how to optimize what you currently have. And then I offer different ways that you can be able to, leverage best practices, and I have a whole catalog and that sort of thing. So really just being able to leverage the system where you have it today, but then be able to optimize it with best practices and integrations and all of that. I'll have my information at the very end. So if you are interested in learning more about my services at that time, more than welcome to schedule a free one-on-one 30-minute call with me, and we can discuss what project you're looking for. I also do some training as well, but definitely go to my website, and you can learn more about all of those different services. So today, our main focus, as I kind of alluded to, as far as me really understanding the CRM and how do we leverage the CRM to its fullest, Redtail has some automation capabilities, but what I love about how GReminders has really filled the gap of those automations. So when you have an event type, you can automatically launch those workflows. You can automatically launch those notes to be pushed depending on the AI note taker, which we'll get into momentarily. But what I found is that the CRM has its limits, and what's a bummer is that with the manual tracking that has to be done, being able to figure out how we can leverage the system as best we can, and really making sure that automations can be put into the system so that way things don't fall through the cracks. You're not chasing no shows. All these things happen if you don't have a system in place. And so being able to leverage technology can really help you be able to take your system and your client service to the next level. So again, the solution is really having an automated peace of mind, making sure that the CRM only has the clients or prospects that you want, making sure that everything is happening within those other systems, and then the CRM is reflecting current data. Making sure that the CRM is really more than just a digital Rolodex. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it being described that way, but I feel like the CRM should be a power tool for you. So that way you can be able to leverage it in a way to give you insights, understand bottlenecks, and use it as a tool, a main part of your toolkit, being able to give that best client service possible. So when we talk about leveraging technology, essentially the rest of this presentation is how do we make sure that each step of the client journey is automated in a way that is, most efficient for your team. So really the first step that you can leverage automation is from the beginning of that client relationship. So a lot of times people reach out to me and say, how do I make sure that I have some sort of a way to take data in? So again, because I'm a resource partner with Precise FP and because GReminders now has an integration with them, it makes it seamless. So what I always recommend is that, let's say, for this use case, we have a a firm that wants to have intakes within their website. So if they have a form on there of just first name, last name, email, and such, what's great is that now, because of the integration with GReminders, you can actually have within that form, not only are you taking that information, but the person can book right then and there. And then there's some automations built into it. So for example, we have the form and it says first name, last name, email. That information gets pushed into Precise FP by just automatically once you submit it. And then again, with that second page, the person will be able to book. So similarly to if you use a different platform, but again, what's great is that once you click on that date or the prospect, right? So let's say what they want to meet next week to meet with you for an introductory call. Once they click on that and it gets assigned, if you've done the due diligence on the back end of building everything out, they could get the reminder emails for those automatically. You could build out automations so that way that prospecting workflow over in your CRM automatically gets done. So all of these things that are behind the scenes that are more administrative in nature or operational can really be taken off of either your plate or your team's plate, which can just save you guys a lot of time, and really focus on those more manual things or things that just have to be done. So Z, I don't know if you have any feedback or anything else you want to add to this initial part of, how do you get the prospecting and those initial items done by leveraging technology?
So yeah, sort of to play off of your use case on having a Precise FP intake form on your website, right? And saying like, probably the prompting button to that is like, answer some questions about yourself so we can learn more about you. And then, they fill out that intake form. GReminders is embedded in the form, and then they can, to your point, all the backend stuff sort of begins to happen with scheduling. So we have a two-way integration with Precise FP. So in the same way that we can complete a form in Precise and then schedule, maybe your process looks a little bit different. On your website, you have book a call with us. And maybe that goes to a routing form where through us, we can kind of pre-qualify that lead. And then let's say like they qualify, now we want them to book a call with us. When they book that meeting, we can actually kick off that Precise engagement. So it really depends on your order of operations, but because we've got that not bi-directional, but two-step or two different ways to integrate with Precise FP, it's a little bit more malleable to your process, just depending on what it is. So that's really my only touch point, because the use case is still stands. And I say typically, more often than not, I see a lot of advisors using it or using the integration with Precise FP for that is like, it's always that intake form, right? Because it's like so long, it's so many things we need to know about you. And it's sort of just integrated very seamlessly into the process. So that way you don't have to be bogged down through all of those administrative tasks.
Definitely. Yeah. And again, it kind of comes back to your process because, some firms that I work with, they do all their prospecting within Precise FP because they have all the automations built in and the pipelines, and they don't want to bring them over to the CRM. And then there's other clients of mine who say, no, the minute that intake comes into Precise FP, I want to push it into the CRM and I want to manage all of my prospects in my opportunity pipelines, whether it's Wealthbox or Redtail. So a lot of it comes down to what makes the most sense for your firm. What is nice is that there's different options. And so I always encourage people to play around with both of the platforms and figure out what makes the most sense for you and kind of what's the end goal, right? So, I mean, the people who feel like they're taking a lot of prospects through webinars or conferences and such, if they're getting a lot of intake, it's kind of nice to keep it in Precise FP because you're able to manage it and then push over those ones into the CRM. Whereas people who have smaller groups that are coming in, then it makes more sense to go over to the CRM. But again, it kind of just depends on how you want to manage those relationships and how you want to manage the softwares as well. So as far as the next step, so I'm going to now go through, so here's just a quick, so I'll talk through it, but essentially this is just a video that's going to walk you through what the pre-meeting brief looks like. So if you use the AI note taker, what's really great is that, so let's say, again, with our process, right? So let's say someone just books, we did the intake and they book a call. What's great is that you're able to get information from that. So of course, for the first call, you're only going to get their first name and last name and anything that's on that form. But with these pre-meeting briefs, what's great is that, as you can tell with the video, everything that has been discussed in previous meetings is able to come in and then be able to prepare you for that call. So again, for like a client review, the system is going to look at all notes and tasks and workflows and everything. It's going to look at all of the material and be able to put together this brief for you that you would otherwise have maybe an assistant put together, having to get all these different reports and having to get all this information from a variety of different sources. So being able to just pull all of that in from the CRM, from the notes and everything, just make it that much easier to be able to prepare for that meeting. And so again, that's where I'm a big advocate, as Z was mentioning, for making sure that you're cleaning up your data, making sure that the system is set up in a proper way. So that way, when these pre-meeting briefs are generated, the system is very clear as far as what is going to be part of that brief, and making sure that there is information in there to grab and be able to generate something like this. So again, it just saves the advisor so much time before jumping into a call. The prep work, is very, very minimal. They just usually read this brief, maybe do a handful of different other research items, looking at investments, for example, or their financial plan. But it's just cut down to a fraction of the time now because of the pre-meeting brief. So Z, I don't know if you want to jump in on anything else related to the pre-meeting brief.
A little. I just wanted to expand a bit. So you don't have to take advantage of the AI note taker to have access to pre-meeting briefs. It is part of our AI agent element, which is secondary or separate from that. And to Steph's point, like the data that these produce is only as good as the data that's in the CRM, right? So this is not going to produce anything if our advisors are not putting their meeting remarks in the notes or the historical timeline of the CRM, right? We won't have a whole lot to draw on. But what this does is essentially integrates with your CRM. We will look at everything on the contact, compile all of that, and then put it into this brief. You can also template these, right? So different meetings, you probably want to be prepared in a different way. For a review meeting, that probably looks different than what I need the AI agent to go into the CRM and look for if it was a tax planning meeting, right? Like I'm probably not going to need everything on within the notes, but I might need specific figures, that sort of thing. So we can actually tell it what to look for and then create this really intricate or specific pre-meeting brief so you can be more prepared headed into your meetings.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so just like with ChatGPT, I mean, the world is your oyster when it comes to this information. You could just keep on teaching it how you want to run your business. So really just making sure that you're crafting those templates in a way that makes the most sense for you. And that is something that I do support with as a resource partner, is not only building out event types, but if you do need help with these briefs or anything else that I mentioned today, crafting those templates and such for your firm, that is definitely something that we can discuss. So anything else, Z, you wanted to mention about that, or?
No, that's perfect.
Okay. Okay. So now probably one of my favorite parts is the ask anything. So again, similar to ChatGPT, what's great about this part of the platform is the ability to be able to tap into your CRM. And instead of you having to sift through all these notes and having to sift through their contact record and workflows and everything, you can simply just ask it and it will give you that information. And again, if you do take advantage of the AI note taker, you can pull in that information as well. But the goal of it is to be able to have access to data, but using this Ask Anything to be able to ask it questions. And again, saving you time from having to do that research. So for example, in here, what's Roger's spouse name? Within a matter of seconds, being able to pull that in. Does he have a 401k? What are the liabilities? So being able to grab that information very quickly. And again, it all comes back to making sure your CRM is as clean as possible and is updated, and having all those notes be saved in there and pushed in, again, post meeting. But yeah, the ask anything is definitely something cool. And then the do anything is new as well. So Z, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that as well.
Sure. So similarly, right, it's all done in the same place. So in the same way you see here, we're prompting it and asking, does Roger have liabilities? If we were looking for specific figures or we had maybe follow-up tasks from that, we could then prompt the same thing and say something like, create an activity to ask Roger about, insert, right? And then that would create an activity or a task in your CRM. It would assign it to you and link it to Roger's contact. So that way, again, it falls within that that historical timeline. Most often advisors are using that in meetings, right? So like if your client has a quick question and you're, instead of kind of sifting through all the notes or trying to dig into custodian information or whatever, if you have that flowing into your CRM, we'll be able to leverage that here. Same thing with the do anything. We can launch workflows. We can create opportunities. We can create tasks. We can write notes. So if you say, create a note on Roger's contact, and then it's everything, and instantaneously it puts it over. So it's really powerful in that way, because you could be in a meeting and something come up and you don't want to forget, we're scribbling it down. Instead, we're just very quickly create an activity for insert person at my firm so they can do this, this, and this for Roger. And then you don't have to worry about those kind of strenuous and sometimes very long post-meeting processes, right? Like, okay, I have to remember what we talked about an hour and a half ago in the very beginning. Instead, you could just really be doing that live into the CRM without, as we know, a bajillion clicks, right? Like add an activity, link everybody here, do all of this, input the description, link the person that it's supposed to go to, set the due date. It's like, we could just type that out and say, boom, and then it's done. So it's a really powerful tool in both knowledge grabbing, right? Seeing what is already in there without having to sift for a while, because it could be something you talked to them a year ago about, as well as being able to very quickly update information and put things in there that need to be worked through, i.e. processes.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's very exciting. You guys just released the do anything. So I'm excited to see more and more people use it, because I agree. I mean, yes, it's great to be able to launch those different things after the meeting. But then you have to carve out that time, even though it is saving you so much time from having to go into the CRM, you still have to carve out that time afterwards. But, if you're in the meeting, you have Zoom up on one and then you have this up on the other, and then you're able to launch everything as you're discussing. It just saves you just so much time. And as Z was mentioning, it's not just launching workflows. You can launch many different things. So that way you can be able to leverage all features within the CRM, and you don't have to be limited in that way. Perfect. All right. So as I mentioned before, the AI note taker, so that is separate. But yeah, so as Z was mentioning, the brief is irrelevant to the AI note taker, as well as the ask anything. But if you do take advantage of the AI note taker, what is great is that, again, it's all in one spot, right? So it's all under one umbrella. So that way you're not having to pull notes from a different note taker. But as you can see from this quick little video, you can be able to have all the information there. So you have the summary there, you have the transcript, you can watch the video. And what's great too is that with these summaries, you can customize those. So those can be templated. And again, that's something that I help a lot of people with as well. And then from here, then you can take those actions. So as we were mentioning, the do anything is great when you're in a meeting and you want to quickly be able to launch that task template out to do an IRA contribution. So that way that can be taken care of by your staff right then and there. Or let's say there's an RMD or something that's time sensitive. But after the meeting, if you need to take care of things within here, within the AI note taker, this is something where you're able to then take care of all of those different items. So you can, as you can tell with the video, you can launch opportunities, you can launch the workflows, you can launch the activities, notes. So there's lots of things that you can do, and everything is customizable. So it'll ask you if you want to do things, but then you can customize everything, as well as the email follow-up. So making sure that we want to promptly send them an email post-meeting with what happened. I've just seen a lot of success with advisors I've worked with where they have seen a lot of retention from clients having that email be sent out within 24 hours. So I had one client who wasn't doing it as fast. He usually would send them out by the end of the week. And then once he started using the AI note taker, he was sending them out after 24 hours. And he just saw an overwhelming, increase in confidence with his client base because they knew exactly what was happening and they really appreciated his promptness after the meeting. And then the documentation, they really liked the format as well. And so we customized the template to be exactly how he works his meetings. And it has worked out really, really well for him. And again, these all get saved and you can push everything into the CRM. So again, it's a whole full circle. You're doing all of these notes and then it gets pushed into the CRM and then you get it back for the pre-meeting brief for that next review. Which kind of alludes to what we're going to talk about later in the presentation. But really the goal is really just the more data you can put into the system and be able to track, the better. And so by leveraging automation and AI to be able to do that can really help you. But Z, is there anything else that you wanted to add to this?
Well, the first thing is I really appreciate that you mentioned the client experience side of the benefit to the note taker. I think a lot of times in webinars like this, where we hone in on the benefits of technology, oftentimes it's like time-saving efforts and, streamlining like operational processes. And that's extremely valuable and ultimately why we expand our tech stack. I totally understand that. But I don't think that we talk enough about how the client experience changes, right? Because now as an advisor, we have more time to be present in meetings. We're more prepared. We're arriving to those a little bit more centered. And then even in those post processes, to your point, having the ability to very quickly touch base with our clients and prospects post meeting is obviously going to increase client retention, but then also might be the deciding factor on if a prospect decides to go with you or not, right? On how quickly you're able to touch base with them or reach out to them again. And that is, truly a piece to the benefit of the AI note taker. A couple little things. So in terms of functionality, right? The two little points I kind of wanted to bring up. We released semi-recently opportunity and task prompting. So basically, it's kind of an advanced feature within the AI note taker where we can say, we can give it kind of different direction, where if we speak about this specific topic, create or recommend creating this opportunity, right? So it could be like if you hear about somebody having a child, the birth of a child, right? Maybe we look at adding beneficiaries, create an opportunity for potential new business, whatever. You're able to kind of, like I said, we can listen out for individual topics, and then in the post, you'll be able to see that populate in opportunities. And then similarly with tasks, right? Maybe instead of utilizing the opportunity tracker for stuff like that, we have processes that we need to kick off. So we're listening out within the conversation, and then we're recommending activities or tasks to push over to your CRM. So we'll populate those automatically for you, not just based on things that you're actually saying, I will get this done for you. It can be a little bit more expansive and abstract. Also on here, similar to the Ask Anything feature separate from the AI note taker, inside of your note taker, where you're looking at the summary, you're seeing the tasks, you're seeing the transcript, you also have what's called chat. So this is similar to the Ask Anything, which looks at your entire CRM contact, like the contact within the CRM. This chat feature looks at everything within the meeting. So let's say fast forward, instead of going through the whole transcript or the meeting summary, didn't pull out a specific figure, or it did, and you need to find where it's at. You can use that chat feature to say, I know we talked about this. What is it that she said about this, right? And then it'll give you the answer. It'll bring you right to that piece of the transcript. So that way you can be a bit more informed. So it's a good little thought exercise really for the note taker itself. But I always like to point that out because I feel like even myself, whenever I'm doing note taker training with advisors, I often brush past it, but it's a really great feature to leverage.
Definitely. Yeah, so just like the Ask Anything, it's just nice to have all of this at your fingertips. And then you can share it with whoever that you want. I also like on the top right, how many, who spoke most in the meeting as well. And you're able to see who, that information, as well as the related contacts. And then again, the recommendations, and then the action items are really great at the bottom there as well. But yeah, so having all of this at your fingertips and then being able to customize every part of it can really save you a lot of time. Again, versus you having to take all of this down separately. And as you can see, there's charts, you can really customize these. So if you do need help with customizing those templates, again, feel free to reach out. But that is something that I think can really take your GReminders platform to a whole nother level, is being able to teach it exactly how you run your business. Because that's my viewpoint on AI and automations, is that, currently, at least today, how AI is, it's very logic based. And so you have to teach it everything. So the more information that you can give it, the better answers and then the better outcome that you will have. But it's definitely a two-way street at this point. But it's asking those right questions and really being able to teach it in a way that makes the most sense. But a lot of it comes down to the prompting. So as long as you know that, then you're in good shape. So if you do need help with that, just let me know. All right, and then also, so we have, as you could tell, within the AI note taker, for example, we had the follow-up email, but after you have the meeting, just in general, this is what a meeting summary looks like here in the video. So it just has all those different sections. Again, this is totally customizable, but it goes out right after the meeting. So it's really nice to be able to send this out. Again, increase the rapport that you have with your prospects or your client base. They get that overall summary, they get all that information, so that we are able to get that information, action items, all of that. They have access to the recording. So to, again, take that off of your plate or your operations team members' plate, so that way you can focus on the next meeting, and really just take advantage of those automations and such. Z, do you have anything else to add for the post meeting?
No, I feel like all of mine was talked about in the AI note taker, so that was
Okay.
perfect.
Okay. Yeah, and so then for the follow-up, so it's really great to, again, I know I didn't really spend a whole lot of time on the events in particular within GReminders. There's so much that you can do with that, because I really wanted to focus today's presentation on more the AI and the automation capabilities. But within the event types itself, you can really set up a lot of different touch points and email follow-ups and even text message follow-ups, any sort of touch points. So you can really do a lot of different automation, capabilities within the events itself, as far as this system. But, here's an example of being able to do a follow-up. So, you can be able to push in a draft of this into your email. So Z, I don't know if you want to touch more on this follow-up, but being able to push this information in here can, again, save you a lot of time.
Yeah, just to expand on how it works, you would integrate your email with GReminders, and in the AI note taker, you have a button to follow up via email, and that can actually be stamped, stuff to your point, in the drafts of your email, so you can send it directly from your email. You can also do the exact same thing within GReminders. It just depends on your functionality and how you work. But yeah, it's a great tool, right? Because then the message is actually coming from you as an advisor. You're not having to like copy and paste, was really, the effort to circumvent that.
Yep, definitely. All right, so then I wanted to spend some time too on the client review end-to-end process that GReminders has put together. So again, to me, this is something where I really enjoy being able to set this up for a lot of advisors, because I feel like client review is always one of those kind of, pain points, if you will, for a lot of advisors, because it needs to happen for certain clients and maybe not for others. But the fact that you have to track who has had one and who hasn't, and being able to just put it on autopilot can really just save you and your team a lot of time. So the key is that you got to do a lot of the setup on the front end of it. Of course, you have to figure out your classification. So when you look at your client base, you want to make sure that you're tagging properly to make sure that each one, so let's say you use the AAA, AA, single A method, or, gold, silver, bronze, however you determine what your segmentation is, making sure that all of that is completed on the CRM side and making sure that it's tagged properly, or keywords, however that you set it up. But what's great is that you can batch meeting invites based off of that. So the system, again, is more like an engine on the back end. And so what it's going to do is it's going to look at these key features within the CRM. And then once that contact trips over essentially that wire, you then are going to go into this assembly line for the meeting prep. So what you can do is you can prepare within GReminders. Again, all of these emails, everything else to be able to have the client review. So you can have the link ready to go for that client event, for the review rather, and then being able to send those out automatically. So that way that link is there, and then your clients at their leisure can be able to go ahead, click on the link and click on the time that works best for them. And again, they will automatically do it. You can build in reminders. So that way, once that has gone out, they will be reminded to book. And then again, what's nice is that the pre-meeting brief, as you saw with the video, you just click on that button and you can be able to read the pre-meeting brief before the meeting. And then you can be able to launch things after, as we just discussed on this whole presentation. So being able to book and then launch your workflows straight from that event once it's booked, prepare for your meetings, and then essentially rinse and repeat, and then be able to start again. But the fact that you don't have to worry about scheduling, for example, can just take a lot of time off of your plate. I have to do a lot of manual stuff within the CRMs currently if you don't use scheduling. So I either build out workflows or task or activity templates, and then we have to manually track it, run quick lists, run reports. But by utilizing this feature within GReminders, just takes that all off of your plate, and scheduling is just done, and meetings come on your calendar, and you're able to then keep up. And then you're really just making sure that everyone did it, more so than having to spend the time calling people, emailing, doing follow-up. All of that could be taken off your plate, and really just focusing on the client reviews themselves, as well as the follow-up that needs to be happening. So Zia, is there anything else that you wanted to jump in on the client review end-to-end process that you guys have built out?
Shoot, do I have a bunch of opinions on, advisors optimizing their CRM, categorizing, classifying their data correctly? Sure, I think we could have an entire webinar just on data cleanup for Redtail and Wealthbox, certainly. But I think like this tool in itself, from an automated scheduling perspective, like when we're looking into the CRM, compiling these lists, sending these things out, of course, so powerful, right? Like you and I both, we came from the industry. We've had to schedule annual reviews for ourselves, for other advisors. That is a really cumbersome process, and one that almost every single firm does, right? So this tool totally takes away the heavy lift of that. And instead, there's just a little bit of oversight, right? It does demand, though, that we have a standardized process somewhat around annual review scheduling. And really all that means is, are we tracking that in a keyword, a tag group, or a Redtail UDF? Really is where I see it most, right? In terms of categorizing like the schedule. So that's always a good place to start. And my general recommendation here, if you are using GReminders and you want to start doing something like this, of course, you can reach out directly to me and I can help you, or Steph, and she can help clean up your CRM, certainly. But whenever it comes to like figuring out or where to start in terms of automating this, it always begins with standardizing the process, because I see very often, well, my advisor, does things this way, but then this advisor keeps everything in the CRM, but this advisor, well, he decides when he wants to meet them at this cadence. Sometimes it changes every year, but kind of creating one general hub of like, no matter what's use cases is a great place to start in wanting to automate something like this. And just a literal general opinion on beginning something like this, but yeah, and then being able to leverage the tool.
Yep, definitely. No, I mean, that's I'm a big advocate of making sure that you're streamlining how you run your business, because every firm that I do work with does do things differently. So really where I focus on is custom build projects for people. But at the same time, I want to make sure the whole firm that I do work with is on the same page of how they approach each part of the business, whether it's prospecting, onboarding, or client reviews and client servicing. Because to your point, it's too difficult when everyone's going in different directions. There has to be some sort of system in place. So really just trying to make sure that everyone's on the same page, because if you want to scale, you have to have that in place. There's just no way you're going to hit the ceiling and you're not going to be able to go forward. And if you really want to leverage software to be able to scale and grow and not have to technically hire, which you can do if you leverage the system in this way. I mean, I've seen some people where they're solos and they take advantage of everything, for example, that GReminders has, and they have been able to double their business and they haven't had to hire because they've been able to leverage the software. But the key is that they had a system in place. They have their client segmentation dialed in. They know exactly what they're doing with their prospects onboarding process, as well as their client reviews, and everything is buttoned up. So therefore, they're able to scale with technology. And that's, again, really, you can't go into automation. So even though everything we talked about is great, and I would definitely highly recommend everyone do it, the first step before doing any of this is definitely trying to iron out your processes, because my viewpoint is you want to make sure you're building out those processes. You build them out. Whenever I work with people, I always have them have that at least ironed out, because the CRM just can't be built in a way that is the most efficient without that. And then from there, that's when you can take on automation. So that's where I usually leverage other automation consultants that are in the industry that I work with quite frequently, where we build out the system in a way that then they can take it to the next level with Zapier and other automation tools. But really making sure that the system is in place, you have a process and everyone is on the same page. So whether you use standard operating procedures in Word documents, or if you want to document anything in the CRM, there's a variety of different ways that you can approach it. I had one team that used an online knowledge base. They used Notion. Another one used Get Guru. So there's definitely different ways that you can be able to track that information and make it really easy for team members to be able to understand and be able to take advantage of the system in a way that makes sense for you and to be able to scale. And so, yeah, so it's really, all this stuff is really exciting. It's definitely great that GReminders keeps on listening to their users to see what they need. The do anything is definitely something that I think is going to be that next level of where AI is going, where it's more than just producing information for you, but it's getting more and more interactive. So as I was mentioning, you really have to teach it a lot at this point in time, but we'll see where it goes from here. But I definitely recommend that you just keep on checking out all these different parts of the system. And yeah, excited to be able to answer any questions from here. But Z, I don't know if you want to pipe in if there's anything else that you wanted to mention. And before I do, pass it back to you. If anyone on this call wants to, again, feel free to schedule a free call. But if you do decide to move forward and you need support with GReminders, whether it's building out templates or building out events and such, by attending this webinar, you'll get $100 off that project. So without further ado, I'll pass it back to you, Z.
Yeah, so while we're waiting, and everyone, please feel free to put any questions that you might have for myself or Steph in the Q&A. And as those kind of begin to trickle in, I think, Steph, I just wanted to pick your brain a little bit. On this side, on like the implementation side, when I'm building out GReminders for different firms, it's a structure, right? So like you can't, do one thing without having done another. And so like the typical cadence to that is like event types and then reminders. And then we can start looking at proactive scheduling and proactive notifications. But always once we get to like the proactive notification side, yeah, there's like, we have some considerable cleanup to do. And so, yeah, in general, any best practices around like a good place to start when it comes to CRM cleanup that advisors could leverage or come away from today, so that way they could begin expanding their tech stack to take advantage of automations and AI stuff.
Definitely. I think the first thing that I always recommend, so Redtail has what's called their style guide, and you could essentially apply it to Wealthbox as well. But it's the back end of the system that is all of your menu items essentially. So that's your list of tags and your list of keywords and such. So what I usually do, so I have my own triage process that I personally do with my clients. And one big part of it is looking at that database list and seeing what they currently have, and then being able to identify what makes sense to keep, delete, update, and also what's nice to add. So Redtail has put together their style guide as far as their best practices. And then I personally have my list just with working with many, many different advisors, and then just from my previous experience as well. And so really going through that exercise of doing that cleanup, because a lot of times, a lot of people have either recently or relatively recently moved, let's say, to Redtail or Wealthbox, and they brought over all this legacy information. Normally I go in there and there's just a lot of stuff in there that just isn't necessary. So being able to just do that cleanup and making sure that everything in there is valid, that's a big spot that I always gear people towards. Another is just their overdue tasks and opportunities, and activities, depending on what CRM you're using, making sure those are all cleaned up, and up to date. So either completing those, or rolling them over to the next day or reassigning. I always like to get into the habit of, by around 4 o'clock or so, anything that's open on your to-dos, making sure that you're reassigning it to the correct, maybe the next person if you're going on vacation, or rolling it over to the next day, but really trying to alleviate you from, having to go back and look at past due, and really pushing it to that day or the appropriate day. That's another area. And then same with workflows. So you want to always look at your workflow steps and really be able to, either take advantage of whatever you need to that day or pushing it over to the next, but really being able to document what's happening within those tasks and activities and workflows. And then that way the team understands what's happening. So if a workflow is still open past its due date, why is that? Well, if you keep up with those notes within it, then the team will know, oh, we've been waiting for 3 weeks because Mr. and Mrs. Smith have been on vacation. So that's why we haven't been able to get the DocuSign from them, for example, or something. So really making sure that those different parts are as cleaned up as possible. Another big area too that I always like for people to do, it's quite a bit of a cleanup, is really making sure that every single contact has some sort of relationship assigned. So that's either a status and or a category in Redtail or a contact type in Wealthbox. So usually it's either blank, or in Redtail it could be not specified. So I always say, if you can, try and assign those at a bare minimum. Make sure your clients are at least assigned, but really making sure that those relationships are identified. So that way, especially for the non-advisors, if they don't have a close relationship with those people, it's nice to know, are they a child of a client, or are they a vendor? Who are they to the firm? And again, that goes back to the database lists and the workspace customization, is that's that pick list of what relationships do you have with those clients, what tags are appropriate. But those are the major areas for the contact cleanup. And then of course, missing information. But when I do my CRM health check, which is a dashboard, that's where I'm really trying to hone in on what is really the health and the status of the system, and then where areas that we can elevate and improve. And so those are the different areas that I usually like to start with.
No, that's great. Do you ever see like anything so consistently wrong with advisors using their CRM where it's like, oh, the first place I'm going to check is this because it's typically they're not using like this functionality correctly, or some kind of weird classification thing?
Yeah, so I mean, whenever I look at like the clients, I have my like 5 things I'm always looking for. But probably the top thing that I'd say a majority of people make a good effort towards it, but really making sure that every client is assigned to a family in Redtail or a household in Wealthbox, because the way that those are both structured, they're contact related CRMs. So it's really critical that you have each of the contacts associated with their family or their household, so that way the information flows up. So I always have the philosophy, and I know the CRMs do too, where with the with especially with Wealthbox, you want to make sure that every single contact is associated with a household, even if they're a single person, just because the information is flowing. And then again, to the point of, when you're doing these pre-meeting briefs and you're using GReminders and you're looking all that information, essentially the household record on Wealthbox is kind of your repository. So if it is a family, let's say of a head of household, a spouse, and 3 kids, anything that's happening with any one of them flows into this household. So that way you're able to see all the activity, whether it's notes or tasks, anything in one spot. So I'd say that's probably one of the big things that I see a lot of people missing. Another is client sense. I know it doesn't seem that intuitive to have to keep track of, but honestly, it can be a really powerful field, so that we are not having to use extra tags or keywords to run, for example, these like client reviews and such. So having that client sense can be very, very powerful. And I see a lot of people overlook that field as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. To your first point, creating a web of information, right? It's like the more things you have attribution to, first of all, from a secondary tool, an integration tool, that's just more information that we can leverage, right, to produce better data. Again, it goes back to that point you spoke of. I reiterated that, these tools, no matter what they are only as good as the data that you give them. So if you're not putting in the information into your CRM, we're not able to produce really good results for you. But then to your second point, that date. I can't tell you, I love using that for annual reviews because we can see that date in the criteria for bulk sends. So I know earlier I spoke of like the keywords, UDFs, contact UDFs, and tag groups. Those are just typically, places I see people track like annual review month, or in the UDF, it'll be like the actual date that maybe their annuity renews or something like that. And so that's usually like whenever, we're doing our annual reviews. But I love using client sense date, right? Because if they have, multiple different annuities, or if they have, they're on like a different cadence, like if you're only doing like insurance or Medicare or something, totally separate that maybe we don't actually have like renewals around, client sense date is such a great date to leverage against. And also it's right there on the contact when you look at it, so it's like you're not having to dig for the information. It's not a field you have to like go out of your way to add. It's just right there when you input and you're creating the contact. So I always like that one, especially when it's written into a process to collect, because it just seems sort of like a no-brainer. And then we can look at that and leverage it. Obviously, it's useful to have how long they've been a client. I use it and build it all the time for advisors that want to use the bulk send for like client retention things. So for instance, it's a really great touch point, every year to send a really nice email to our clients that says, thank you so much for being a part of our firm. It's our client anniversary, and we're leveraging that client sense date to do so. So, we hear all the time from clients, like they don't hear from their advisor enough. And typically within the first year, clients will leave their advisor. It's something over like 50% of clients leave their advisor within the first year because they don't hear from them. It'd be really great if we could just automate various touch points, like saying happy birthday in a text message, or to this point, using client sense date to, thank them for being a client each year and being a part of your firm. But really, you actually haven't had to do anything manual to like reach out and have those touch points. So being able to have the data within the CRM and then leveraging big integration tools this way, it's only going to benefit you. I'm such a big person, and even on like this side of the aisle with our own CRM, like in GReminders, it's so much more valuable to me to have an overabundance of information if it's classified correctly than not enough information, because ultimately you're just going to be more informed as long as, to your point, that's optimized and organized correctly. You're really only going to arrive to those meetings and be, more informed, and to be able to give your clients a much more personalized client experience.
Yep. No, definitely.
Anyways, so that being said, Steph, thank you so much. I kept you on here a little bit longer, and also so did everyone else. I think they also enjoyed a little bit of candor. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you have any questions, of course, please feel free to reach out to me directly, or Steph is also, of course, a huge resource here, and she also has her email. If anybody has any further questions, I do believe a recording for this will go out to everyone in the post. So be on the lookout for that if you want to leverage this later. And also, we typically do upload these to our YouTube channel. But again, Steph, as always, I love chit
Of
chatting with
course.
you. I feel like we could
Yes.
talk for hours, but to
I know.
save everyone else's time, I guess I'll let everybody go.
Yep. Sounds
Thank
good.
you again.
And I'll send over the PowerPoint slide deck as well. So if everyone wants that, they can get that as well.
Perfect. Yeah, we can include it.
Awesome.
So thank you. Thank you everyone for hanging
All right.
on and being a part of our conversation. And we'll see you next time we do one.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye.